Hello, total transparency here, and this is kind of my first sappy video. There's gonna be a lot of them, but in order to understand my future videos and why I'm documenting my transition, whether it's the good or the bad parts, in order to really understand the joy I feel, I think I need to talk about how it all began. They always say that everybody has a coming out story. I do, but I wouldn't exactly call it linear. Most people accept that you come out gay or trans once and you're done. That's really not the case. For a lot of people, trans people in particular, it's an ebb and a flow process. There's a lot of things you question, and a lot of it depends on circumstance as well. So I might do a future video about the CAS identity model for LGBT people, because that definitely applies here. But a lot of it has to do with circumstance and privilege. Before you cry, SJW, hear me out. I'm probably going to make some future videos on why transitioning is an economic privilege. But right now, I kind of want to tell you some things I really have never gone public about. Everyone has known me as the kid with black lipstick or the goth girl, and it would have been easier to live that way. However, life isn't that simple, and underneath all of that, not that goth isn't a part of my identity, but underneath everything is something that I really never disclosed to anybody, except the few people in grade school who really know about it. So, like a lot of trans people, I mean, every trans person is different. You're going to have different people feeling different things at different ages. But for me, my gender dysphoria has been lifelong. Around the age of 2 or 3, right when my autism symptoms started kind of showing up a little bit, right when it becomes like take your kid to a doctor level of odd behaviors and lack of communication skills, I started exhibiting a lot of dysphoria. It's when I first started showing gender non-conforming behaviors. So being a firstborn child and coming from a very upper middle class WASP family, I was put in a lot of frilly dresses. I was made to take ballet. Got kicked out. I don't remember why. Probably for punching somebody. I did almost get suspended from kindergarten for throwing sand in a kid's eye because I didn't know that's not appropriate. But a lot of the times I felt like I was treated like a baby doll. I couldn't really put my finger on what was going on, but I knew how bad it felt. So I didn't really have the cognitive ability to show my discomfort yet, but it wasn't something I had ever been exposed to. I had never seen a trans person. There was no Tumblr, contrary to what conservatives will claim. This wasn't a social contagion. Nobody gave me the trans. Nobody gave me the gay, so to speak. And anybody who tells you otherwise is full of shit, because we've been around since the dawn of time. But it wasn't something that was being discussed, and it was very taboo. Nobody really talked about gays or lesbians or anybody like that. So as I grew older, the feelings of discomfort really started to increase. Not quite exponentially, but the more aware I became of myself, the worse I felt. It was bad. And along with the really intense discomfort, extreme behavioral issues started appearing as well. So when my super femme cisgender siblings were born, they kind of took favoritism away from me. And this is when my extended family and other relatives started noticing my behavior compared to my siblings. My parents being first-time parents, I don't think they really understood that a lot of my behavior is genetic, environmental, etc. But they noticed how the other little girls played, and everybody would remark that why is that kid acting that way? Sometimes I got punished for it, because those behaviors are rewarded in boys. You want them to be adventurous, you want them to be this and that. but so help me God, if you rip that head off another Barbie doll, you're gonna get a spanking kind of thing. But a lot of people took extreme distaste to it early on. Eventually, it did turn into constant fights over my clothing, my wardrobe, and I don't think they understood what gender dysphoria was. It was always a proper young lady wouldn't do that, and that you'll grow out of it. I'm sure it's just a phase, patting my parents on the back. You don't want your kid to be a lesbian, do you? And being a little kid exposed to this, that's when you start thinking that you're inherently bad or wrong. And this is kind of what I took to heart. The behaviors never stopped, though. I wanted to believe that they would, and maybe I'd feel comfortable like everyone else. But they never stopped, and I grew older. So there came a time when I started growing body hair. It was incredibly early, and my parents took me to a doctor who said I was incredibly precocious. I didn't know what puberty was because I'm a little kid, and it was a much more sheltered time. I didn't have an internet to surf. It was AOL with the dial-up and the scary robot noises. There wasn't MySpace. There wasn't anything. I had no way to connect. I knew what sex was, but I didn't quite understand puberty. So one day, my parents got me a notoriously banned puberty book. I highly suggest you look it up. It's called It's Perfectly Normal. The reason it's challenged and banned is because it has depictions of masturbation and homosexuality in it. And people find this offensive for God knows what reason. I didn't understand what was wrong with it. But even though what I was reading made a lot of sense, I remember closing the book and realizing I was about to start a puberty I didn't want. I'd be developing breasts. I'd be starting a period eventually. And it was terrifying. I was 8 or 9 years old, and the sheer thought of turning into a sex that did not match me honestly caused me to contemplate suicide for the first time, an 8-year-old. I never told anybody because I was afraid of getting sent to another doctor as a punishment, but it bothered me a lot. So from that day on, I really dreamed about having gender reassignment surgery one day or taking hormones. And little did I know this was the least of my problems. My father got a job transfer here in West Virginia. I was originally from Dallas, Texas. There were people of all races, all colors, all different kinds of people. I had no idea what prejudice was. I didn't understand poverty. I didn't understand the dilapidated buildings I saw when I came here. And I was confused. I wanted some answers about it, but I didn't quite know what was going on until I started 4th grade at Elkview Elementary. The day I walked in, it was the first time I had heard the word dyke. It bothered me a lot. I didn't know what it meant, but I knew it was a bad word when I asked my parents what the kids were talking about. So it was the first slur I had ever heard. I had never even heard the N-word. I was very sheltered. I grew up in a lot of privilege, and I didn't understand what bigotry was. So I was the unpopular kid, naturally. Nobody really liked me. I was always the last one picked. Didn't know why. So I didn't know why these kids were bothering me or why they didn't like me. So it got worse. Other than physical abuse from a teacher that went to the school board, but it got much, much worse. There was a swim class we had at our school. It was indoors, and we had locker rooms that we changed in. I pleaded to use the boys' one or use my own private stall, but they said I needed to be normal. They pushed me into the girls' locker room, and eyes were upon me. And I did what I thought I had to do. I went into one of the bathroom stalls and closed it. As soon as I was bare naked, I I heard it. The stall had been kicked open by another kid. The entire class was there laughing, asking about my body parts and saying, "Look, it really is a girl." I don't remember a lot after that. I just remember curling up on in a fetal position, and they brought out disposable cameras, and I never told anybody because I didn't know what sex abuse was. I didn't know what exploitation was. I didn't know it was wrong because it was normal to me. So I never cried about it because it was the last shred of dignity I had. I went to swim class as normal, and eventually the cycle repeated itself until they were satisfied with looking at my body. Kids are cruel. You don't think they'd do something like this, but they will. So, months went by, and the fights over clothing got much, much, much worse. And eventually I was taken to a psychiatrist as a punishment, where I was diagnosed with gender identity disorder when it was, and they talked to me like I was the equivalent to someone who belonged in an institution. I thought I was sick and mentally ill, and every adult in my life called me that. Pat you on the head, aren't you cute? Oh, they're so sick. Oh, that poor kid. As if I was something to be pitied. And while I may have difficulty with social cues, I'm not stupid. I'm not. I may need a bit of extra information, but I know when you're being mean to me. I know when I'm being belittled, and it hurt. I couldn't quite put my finger on why it hurt, but I knew that it did. So as the months passed, my dad got us a new home after living in a tiny apartment for a long time and undergoing a lot of difficult home lives and situations. So this new school, Montrose Elementary, was a chance to have a fresh start, to fit in with the other boys and to be liked. Things that every child wants. So I actually did fit in. Me and the other boys would play Pokemon out on the playground. Everybody wanted to play basketball with me. I even had a couple girlfriends. I used the restroom that I felt comfortable in. I didn't even know there was a problem. I didn't know what being transgender was, but I knew I wasn't using the girls' locker room. So there came a day when another little boy, I don't know who he was, he heard me peeing while sitting down in the restroom and apparently went to the administrators. When I came home that day, something really bad happened that really messed me up. At the threat of expulsion, my parents had bagged all of my clothing, everything that made me comfortable, everything that made me me, and they threw it away. I came to my little room in the basement, and there was a wardrobe full of limited 2 pink sparkles and Easter dresses. I sobbed. I begged them not to, that this was my life, and how could they? And they were like, well, we're putting a stop to it. I mean, they didn't mean harm. Nobody understood trans kids, and nobody handled me appropriately. I wasn't given a lot of support. It's not that my parents are religious or anything, but at the threat of expulsion, and they couldn't afford a private school, so I went to school in pink the next day. Actually, a gray limited 2 shirt with sparkles on it and pink sweatpants. It was picture day. I walked down the hall just stoically, silently, because when you've been abused, you learn not to cry because you get hit harder, or you're even more embarrassed. It's the last shred of dignity you have, is to suck it up. I remember taking a seat in my 5th grade teacher's class, and she announced to the entire 5th grade class that Ash is really Ashley, and Ashley is a girl. I just thought you all should know that. Everyone turns to look at me. All of my friends left me. I went to picture day with tears in my eyes, and I still have the picture. I didn't cry that whole school day, but apparently it spread like wildfire. My parents started getting angry phone calls from concerned PTA moms. Religious harassment ensued. I was nobody I was being hit and bullied and yelled at daily. Nobody cared. That was the sick kid. That was the queer. Nobody hangs out with him. So I was alone and I was scared, and my secret was out for the entire community, the entire neighborhood. And the days went on. It lasted about a month, really, where I had to go to school in pretty pink outfits that I didn't like, and I fought back tears every day. So I wasn't going to be able to continue like that. I knew that I was going to hurt myself because of the despair, the humiliation, the sadness, if I wasn't given dignity. But I wasn't in a home that was supportive. So goth had always been a really big fascination for me. I loved the Hex Girls. I loved Billy and Mandy. I loved every horror movie that I could get my hands on. I used to go to the Charleston Town Center and just admire the goth people I'd see, how beautiful they were and how brave, and how I loved that outfit. So that was my escape from pink purgatory. The years went by and people forgot. They forgot about it. But the bullying continued. If it wasn't bullying over being gay and being transgender, it was about my look. It was the accusation that you're a devil worshiper. I'm not going to talk about my religious views here, but maybe some truth to it. I think I doth protest too much. Anyways, I got desperate enough to hurt myself, and it was such a traumatic experience that I ended up developing PTSD. It became chronic. It got worse over the years. So did dysphoria. It never went away. I wondered why I was in pain all the time. I put the thought of Ash out of my head. Even though I was miserable. I hated seeing boobs every morning. I hated taking a shower. Like, using the bathroom was practically an Olympic event for me. It was bad. But I knew I couldn't change, and I felt very broken. Even though I was keeping the full extent of it to myself, maybe I danced around the topic sometime, as a lot of trans people do. Kind of try on new identities, but I really couldn't escape the uncomfortable truth that I am trans. And the discrimination and the thought of coming out and dealing with all that hate out there got so bad that I got really drunk, walked out of work, and hung myself off a park bench and managed to survive. I won't talk about that right now. Tomorrow's actually the anniversary, but managed to get loose and go to the hospital. And on that night, I realized that if I could do that, I could come out, that I could be happy, and that I could be Ash, even if I was scared of the whole class laughing at me. So I kind of came out to my university. I mean, all hell broke loose, but I'm used to it. I'm used to being the reject. It's not okay, but it's numbness. I'm not strong, I'm numb. And that is not a quality to be admired. I'd love to talk about that a little bit more in a future video, but I'm not a strong person. I'm not. That's the truth about me. I am numbed, hardened, and dead inside from what I've seen. So, let the insults fly. Let the threats fly. You want some, come get some kind of attitude. Fine. Okay. Oh no, whatever will I do? The frat boys are mad kind of thing. Oh no, whatever will I do? The local religious center is mad. Heaven forbid. Don't read the news comments. Let's shut down the whole school. The usual nonsense. So, aside from all that, I was pretty happy living as a trans man until I met my husband. We fell in love really fast, but I won't go into the details, but I got into a situation where I was being blackmailed from an ex due to family court issues, and I had to give up my transition. My stepchild is now estranged. I don't know them. I don't. And we had to walk away. And my referral for HRT had expired. So since January of this year, I've been undergoing psychotherapy to get a new HRT referral because I have to move on. I have to move forward with my life, and I need to be the man I want to be and the person I was born as. It wasn't a choice, but let me put it this way. Being trans and choosing to transition is like walking out of a burning house. I realize that I'm going to die, I'm going to be miserable, and I'm going to waste my life. But the exit door is right in front of me. The house is about to collapse. It's either you or your fake life as a woman. It's choosing to walk out that door even though that house that's on fire is all you've ever known. I had to, because I don't want to die before I'm 32. And tomorrow being the anniversary and all, I just know I'm doing the right thing by having spent $2,000 on psychotherapy that professionals agreed I didn't need, because trans people have to jump through hoops to get hormones even. And it's a privilege to even be able to hold a job that'll still keep you after knowing that about you, to be able to have health insurance, to be able to pay for those copays without an informed consent clinic. So this upcoming Tuesday, June 25th, 2019, I go to the doctor, and I'm going to be getting my note, and I'm going to film that. I mean, I already have my note, it's in my laptop bag, but I'm going to go get my injections, and I'm scared. But I'm happy, because I need to walk out the burning house. I need to move on with my life. I don't want to tell pity parties for the rest of my life or sit at my desk with some fake acceptance from people who will never even like me. They won't like me as a woman, they won't like me as a man, but I like me. I need to be healthy. I need to be okay, and I need to be Ash. And that's who I'm going to be. I don't even know why I really wanted to talk about this, other than to give context for my future videos. But I don't even know the moral of the story or the point or what you're supposed to take for it. If anything, I really do hope that some trans kid going through the exact same thing watches this and sees me. I want you to know that you are not alone. Those adults don't have your best interests in mind. It's about comfort and religion and a lot of other different things. So I guess the main point is that coming out isn't a linear process. It's a lifelong process. Every day you will come out to somebody, whether it's your coworker, your boss, a date, and sometimes that's dangerous. Sometimes you have to come out in the emergency room or at the doctor, because if they don't know that information, they could hurt you. So I want to be the man that I always wanted to be, even if it means getting laughed at by the entire class again, even if it means being vulnerable, even if it means telling all. So I guess ultimately you could say that I am becoming me. I have a lot of hurt, but I'm ready to be happy.